In London 1, he lavished a cold $1 millionth on advertisement for a 3-day travel, on to a resource in expertise of the trip. The US got a couple-week release of the identical allure unpleasant. But lot remnant unidentified on the Corona Duke, who has staked his management and potential his nation's sustainability on earning force to his household. Fail could be hazardous for us all. Frontline and center order now is the war in Yemen. He owns it, and the key fight how could rotate the title of the dispute in Saudi Arabia's benefit is violent in the seaport town of Hodeidah. Not length following his dad took the altar in January 2015, MBs, as he is named, initiate the Abandoned Realms retaliatory strike versus Iran-backed Houthi mob who had aimed Yemen's selected by the government fair above Saudi Arabia's length, poor southern boundary. MBs was, or yet is, Defense Secretary, so any Saudi bloodstream loose would be on his hands. He would be measurable by the year and result of the warfare. Quickly following he verdant lighted the confronting, a boundary guardsman was annihilated in Najran, the at first term of the Saudi forces to die in the dispute. I raced up down there of a neighboring city and met the guardsman's household. MBs arriving quickly following. Winner the war was essential for him, but so was compliance Saudis on party in his grander plans. Above the intermediate year the dispute has escalated, several thousand Yemenis include been annihilated, a tertiary of the nation's people is brief of meal, and Houthi-fired, Iran-made rocket technology, often scud above hundreds of kilometers of abandoned to be shooting downward close the Saudi equity. The lives of Riyadh's more than rather than 7 millionth human beings are in MBs' hands, but the area as a entire is at hazard. A massive casualty occasion in the equity could shove the youthful Corona Duke in outdoor dispute in Iran. But the war in Yemen is just one of the tensions cladding MBs. Saudi's picture is so sullied by Osama bin Laden and the 9/11's rioters, 15 of whom were Saudi, and many decades of laws restrictive main freedoms, largest especially such how influence female, how his communication has struggled to discover broad thrust, no question how intense his allure unpleasant has been. Yet he is necessary the external invest and belief in his abilities to understand his as-called Sight 2030, a gigantic vision of a overloaded Saudi next, automotive out of its fossil fuel dependency and in a diverse world market utilizing the nation's blossoming youthful people. Closing up hundreds of Saudi's industry elitists, on in a equitable few of his own loved ones, consisting some Saudi princes, although in a fantasy inn, several months ago and charging them of corrupt practices didn't do him any supporter while he hit the boardrooms. And the stories how jammed in human beings' minds were the ones his social relations teams couldn't repress. One of them is his repute as a big waster. The PR gurus couldn't repress the say of his supersized boat, or idle talk how he owns the planet's greatest lock and close priceless trimming of art, or explanation of his flash trillion-dollar quarrel in diminutive neighbor Qatar. In his shoes, the critique of his complimentary conducting certainly feels unjust. He is enabling female to driving and producing them go to sports stadiums, enabling piece of music to be play on gateway, allowing outside amateur performance or, maybe really considerably, marginalizing the realm's sectarian police force. And Saudis are no much longer constrained to go to pray 5 times a date. Critics say the changes are just beauty, and mention how the government has detained a quantity of female in latter weeks who include claimed future reforms. But the ambience does appear more than weakened now rather than down there was a year back. As a boyfriend down there told Newly as we were out walk the gateway, he is no much longer done to sense those guilty, love he is creature a poor Muslim. He, as was the instance in nearly everyone else I've talked in down there with MBs became tsar in wait, once the 32-year-old to prosper. A few months back, down there were idle talk of an assault on MB's castle how rotated out after to be castle guard survey downward a wealthy child's hum. In the several hours consumable wait for the facts to come, my boyfriend said me, his largest terror was how MB's was the goal of a coup designed at break his reforms. He has to prosper, my boyfriend said me. We can't go behind. More than rather than any some Saudi up him, in the exclusion of the nationality's basis dad, Tsar Abdulaziz Al Saud, as well named as Ibn Saud, MBs may be the largest courageous lead the nation will receive. He has shocked up the sclerotic flesh political of Saudi by the government, and following several reshuffles, has invigorated and energized it. Ministers and royalty I've talked to explain MBs as a slogger, overwhelming spreadsheets deceased in the overnight, inviting ministers to his office space and to expense way following their sleep time. His rate is evident, the argument less than so. The quicker he goes, the greater the opportunity of a mistake. For each secretary constrained of office space, for each disenfranchised prudent clergy, for each wealthy king delivered in for corrupt practices and fleeced of supposedly bad-gotten billions, for each entrepreneur shocked downward, more than capacity enemies are created. The risks of a drop are as obvious to MBs as they are to the otherwise of the realm and the area. Fail on any considerable front line could flop confusion, of an hideous domestic force fight to an unintentional showdown in Iran, each of that in a lowest case script could conduct to splash in world gas prices. In such a occasion, Saudi Arabia would go of creature a capacity strength for length-term sustainability to a reason of provincial, and though world, obligation. For currently, MBs is compliance his basis, and the nation's tribes, via whom his force historically fluid, are each creature bypassed or cut him quite flaccid to drag his sight away.